Hi, everybody. I'm here with Laura Belgray, and we are talking all things copywriting, inbox heroing, getting books completed. Welcome, Laura. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Laura, like your
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, the Northeast Lauras with the really funny sense of humor. I feel like we have a lot in common, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I know when we first started connecting, you would say something, and then I would say something, and we just kind of kept going and playing off of our Northeast sort of sarcastic humor, and it worked out really nicely in Clubhouse. I hope everyone else liked it. We were having a great time.
We were, yes, we met on Clubhouse, and it can get a little confusing because somebody will say, like, you want to take this one, Laura? And we both go, I guess. And I'm like, no, you go. It would be just a series of jinx, what do you call it? Not simultaneous, in unison. You go. No, you go. No, go ahead. No, go. Okay. And then finally
Oh,
Laura would talk.
no. And then at some point we were just like, is it about branding or copy? Like, what is your question? After about 30 hours of a backstory, we
Yes.
finally got to
Oh my gosh.
it.
Drawing out people's questions on Clubhouse because they tell their whole life story
Yes.
as a, and then there's no question usually.
Right. Which really does go to show that during this time of quarantine and us all kind of just hanging out in our houses, looking for connection, Clubhouse was a pretty useful tool in that way. And I know this is a lot of what you specialize in, is helping people really figure out how to write copy that isn't boring, that
Yes.
creates a connection, that makes people want to actually have a dialogue with you and get into two-way interaction, right? Why do you think so many people struggle with that?
Well, when it comes to what we were just talking about, like Clubhouse, where they would just ramble and tell, a 10-minute story as a preface to a question, or it's just not even with a question. I think it's because in that case, it's because they, first of all, haven't worked on what they haven't picked up yet on what they say resonates with people, what people respond to. And second, we are all so desperate to be seen,
Yeah.
and especially during this time, right? We want to be seen, we want to be understood. We all know that we have a story, like most of us know we have a story and we want some way to tell it, and we don't know where to put it. And Clubhouse just gave a perfect platform to get there and be like, well, I was in the military 10 years ago, and that's where I lost my sense of smell. And then a whole whatever the story was. I mean, there are a couple of things at work there, and some people would tell really great tight stories, and uh and it was clear that they had honed those, or they were naturally good at understanding what people want to hear, and what is compelling storytelling, what isn't.
Yeah. Is that something that always came natural to you, or is it something that you feel like you've worked on over the years?
I think I think storytelling always came naturally to me, and writing the way I talk always came naturally, except in, say, college and high school, when you weren't allowed to do that, and you didn't know that you could do that. You didn't have permission to do it, but that's always been, I'd say, a gift of mine that is totally learnable for other people. But yes, I was going to say storytelling has always come fairly naturally to me, but I am understanding now, as I write a book, which is a series of essays and stories, that I have a lot more to say than people necessarily can digest. So
Yes.
I mean, so there are different levels of it, and getting a feel for what moves the story along and what bogs it down is a whole other level.
Yes. I love that you're sharing this. And when you said the title of your book, which is called Tough Titties,
Mhm.
I knew this was just another thing that we had in common because my 4 foot 10 or 4 foot 10 inch grandmother used to double fist her rosaries and yell tough titties at us. Italian grandmother, whenever we would do or say something about some kind of complaint, right, in her home, she would always have her rosaries and she would be like, tough titties. And it made me laugh so hard when you said that that was the name of your book. So, how does the title tie in with essays, a series
Okay.
of essays?
Okay, I'm going to get into that in a second, but I just want to point out the beauty of your storytelling that you just told, like in such a pithy way, just one sentence. My 4'10" grandmother used to double fist her rosaries and yell tough titties at us. That's all such beautiful, rich, concrete detail that we can picture. So I wanted to point it out. I wanted to highlight that because that is a key element to good copy and good storytelling is those concrete details. Like if you asked us to draw a picture of that, or you asked a movie director to direct the scene, to put together the scene, storyboard it, they would know exactly what to do because of those concrete details. So if you
Thanks.
had just said, like, my grandmother, who was a tough little woman, and and really religious, used to yell tough titties at us, it wouldn't have been as good. This
Yeah.
made it just perfect. So anyway, back to the title. Thank you
That's
for
so
asking.
interesting you say that because I'm somebody, I have a story that I'm good verbally, but that I'm a poor copywriter. That is the story that I have in my head. And I love telling stories. I love entertaining. Probably a lot of people listening might relate to this, where you feel like you're really good talking with people and you can play off their energy and make jokes that make them laugh and engage them in a way that's interesting and compelling. And then you sit down to write and it's like, an error has been let out of the balloon, and so maybe
Yes.
this is something that a lot of people who are listening struggle with. And it seems like you're really passionate about making sure that the way that people talk and the language that they use translates to their written voice as well.
Mm, yeah. And I think that I that what you said is a story of yours is definitely a story. But I understand that it doesn't come naturally when you sit down to write it. First of all, because you have that story, and I think you separate like this was a story I told out loud, and now I'm writing copy, and it must convert. And you try to think of you think of all the rules of copywriting that converts and um, selling. And meanwhile, I think the secret to great copywriting is telling stories that resonate with people and make them relate to you. And sometimes those don't, those don't all cram into like a sales page, but the runway to that sales page, your emails, all the content that you're putting out around it that leads up to it can have those stories in it. And you don't have to think of it, if thinking of it as copywriting stops you up and gets you stuck, then don't think of it that way. Think of it as storytelling in a way that people respond to, that gets them to connect with you and gets them interested. So, so that's all to say that tough titties, like, how does it relate? I came up with it. I was trying to find a way to express the kind of New York vintage, like 1970s, 80s 12-year-old mentality vibe that a lot of my stories evoke. And originally, it was just going to be a book about growing up in New York. It's no longer that. It's way more of I mean, it is still a coming of age story, but it also brings in adulthood and career and, um, getting paid to be you. It's not instructional, but there are lessons about that throughout. And so anyway, tough titties went along with that first idea, but it is also, it's just the thing that you say when you're 12 and roller skating and wearing a terry cloth jumpsuit on the streets of New York. But it also relates to and conveys the idea of saying, I'll just say, the phrase tough titties to all the expectations that are put on us, the way we're supposed to be, the way we're supposed to do things, because I've never been a supposed to person and never done things the way I'm supposed to. And I don't have the kind of timeline that you're supposed to. I'm a late bloomer. I did everything late and kind of on my own terms, in my own slow, slightly rebellious way. Not not tough girl rebellious, not bad girl rebellious, like dancing on a bar in a leather jacket, but just flouting the rules rebellious. So
It's
that's
very
what
New
tough
York of
titties
you.
is. Yes,
Yeah, very New
very New
York of
York.
you. Yeah, I was thinking when you were saying 12-year-olds on roller skates, and I was thinking, or, an Italian grandmother in Buffalo,
Yeah.
similar
Yeah,
probably, similar
exactly.
psychology.
Same
Um,
thing. Same height, probably.
probably.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about these stories, I mean, what made you decide to go in that direction versus teaching people how to write copy, which is really what you're known for?
Yes, it is what I'm known for, and it would be the most sound business choice to write a book that went along with what I'm known for, and that brought in clients that who would go to my website to opt in for, 5 secrets to non-sucky copy or my 33 most open subject lines. This book is probably not going to do that, but it is the kind of writing that I have been wanting to do, that I love to do. I love putting stories into my copy and my emails and telling stories from my life. And so this is a book of those. This was the I'm not going to be instructional. There are no calls to action in here. There are no sidebars with your next steps. There's no, and ending the chapter with exercise.
There's not a
Find a way
countdown
that you can.
clock in between
There's
the
no
chapters
countdown
that pops
clock.
out.
No. And there's no, your tough titties call to action. Here's how you can say tough titties. So there's none of that. And I didn't want to write a business book. It would probably have been a lot easier had I done that, but I didn't want to. So,
Yeah, I'm so excited to read it. One of my favorite books growing up was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And it sounds very
oh,
much like along those
yes.
lines.
Yes,
Yeah.
although that's way before my time. That you might not guess it, but that's from I think the 50s. I think that story is from the 50s,
Yeah, it's so
and my growing up is from a very different time in New York. But yes,
yeah. You and I also have something else really interesting in common. We're both the lesser known half of celebrity partnership.
ah,
Yeah, and I was thinking about that when we were coming on today, it's a very interesting role to have. Like a lot of people probably weren't as familiar with you until they found you through CopyCure,
that's right.
which is how I remember, interacting with you for the first time. What was that like, kind of getting thrown from behind the scenes of being a well-known copywriter for really popular brands? If you go to your website, any listener will see that, to now being sort of an influencer in the internet marketing space.
Yeah. Well, there are different layers there. One is the celebrity partnership. I mean, what a windfall to have the Marie Forleo machine really doing publicity for me. I mean, so many of my leads have come from there. So many of my subscribers on my list have come from there. People get to know me through the Copy Cure all the time. And that is like winning the lottery. As for the like being known part of it, so my vanity, the vain side of me struggles with it because I wanted to be known for me. And a lot of people would say that I was, introduce me as Marie Forleo's copywriter. And first of all, that's a misconception. I was never her copywriter. I was her copywriting partner. And we would write every episode of her show, Marie TV, together.
Okay.
And so I was never behind the scenes writing her copy very much. Maybe sometimes like I'd spend a day doing tweets and stuff to promote the episode. But other than that, I was not Marie Forleo's copywriter, but being referred to as Marie's this or so and so's that or anybody's anything, while it was a huge benefit to me in terms of publicity, it gave me a huge boost and people took me seriously because of it. It also made me feel a little bit like, I want to be known for me. I decided I wanted to be known as, I don't know about cursing on your podcast. So I would just say I wanted to be known as Laura effing Belgray.
Right.
That was what I came to. So I've pushed for a couple of years to do that, to try and be known in my own right, as well as through Marie. And of course, every time we do the Copy Cure, I get tons of recognition from that, but I also try to generate it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was similar. And it's still evolving because it's a new program, but it's taking off quickly. And a lot of people know my business partner, Kelly Roach. But for
Yeah.
me, it was this adjustment of being behind the scenes, happily in yoga pants, happily, just tending to my 3 kids and doing my thing in the background, to all of a sudden realizing like that the benefit of being able to have somebody like that trust in you so much and believe in you so much and want you to have
Mhm.
the recognition that they have. And I'm sure Marie feels the same for you.
Oh
Kelly's
yeah.
always encouraging me, always trying to bring me on stage with her. And she's been just so generous with me. Just that adjustment of okay, here we go. Now I'm on the forefront again and thinking that through and deciding what direction you want to take that type of benefit, I think has been awesome and also challenging because it happens so
Sure.
quickly. Yeah.
Sure. And there, I mean, it would be doing people a disservice if you stayed behind the scenes. There are
Mhm.
people who come to the business that you have together and um, maybe respond more, connect more with you than they do with her. And of course, vice versa. But I know when it comes to me and Marie, there are some tons of people who are like, oh, well, you're more, Marie is one thing and you're another thing. And like I actually prefer learning from you because we have such different personalities.
Mhm.
So it's two different flavors, and it would be a shame to keep one flavor hidden,
Yeah.
right? And for people not to discover the flavor that is you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a big shout out to both Marie and Kelly for
Yes.
wanting other people to be brought up to where they are, right? Like
Oh yeah.
wanting, like seeing talent and wanting partnerships to take place and wanting the talented people in their life to, to be recognized for that work. It
Oh
takes,
yeah. That's a mark of like incredible confidence
yes,
and yeah, so
and abundance.
security and abundance. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's no limit, it's not a zero sum game for
Yes.
them. It's not,
Yes.
they are not at all worried about sharing that
Yes.
spotlight, which is great.
It is cool. Kelly's the same way. She's never, even outside of our partnership, she thinks there's enough for everybody and has that mindset. And I think to have a partnership, you have to be thinking that way. So
Yes.
when as we're thinking through about copy, right? And so that's again what you're most known for. We haven't chatted about it that much in this interview. So I want to leave our audience with just a few tips or things that you would say to somebody who is growing a company, thinking about scaling, trying to do it in a way that feels really authentic to them. How do they encompass copywriting into a brand tone and voice that's really consistent? I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Well, what's great is that when you have a personal brand and it's yours, you have the luxury of getting to sound like you in everything that you do. And if you're a copywriter for somebody else, you don't get to do that necessarily. You probably don't get to do it. So, I mean, my best advice, and I know it sounds easier said than done to sound like yourself, but keep in mind the way you say things. And when something's coming out and it's like, this has no personality, it doesn't sound like me, it doesn't sound like a person. I'm so much more fun in real life, but my sense of humor isn't coming through, my personality isn't coming through. I suggest talking out the copy that you're putting down.
Mm.
And if it helps, talk it out with a friend and see, like, or if that doesn't help and it makes you too nervous and you don't end up talking like yourself to that friend because you're like rehearsing, um, just think, what would I say to a friend? Or you can write it to a friend. So you could even open, what would I tell my best friend if I were telling them about this service? You could open an email draft and start to write to them and say, here's what I'm offering. Tell me if this sounds good. You could write that out
Yes, I love that.
and just say something that would be you. And it sometimes helps to lead up to it in the way I just did, in a way that would be conversational and natural. You can cut that out later, but it might help you get in the flow of being yourself.
I think that's one of the gifts that you bring to the industry is this sense of I don't have to make it overly formal. I don't have to make it sound like the way that I was taught in high school in English class or in college. It doesn't have to fit a formula. And that's something that I hear you advocating for. And it's something that, again, I think you're just incredibly gifted at when you look at all the different messages we hear in the marketplace about the boxes we're supposed to fit into. And I
Yeah.
love that you come at it from a different perspective.
Thank you. Well, we are taught, when in English class, whether it's in college or high school or eighth grade, often we're taught uh, grammatical rules that make our writing look not conversational. It looks formal. So, for instance, your teacher might have crossed out all your contractions if you said don't instead of do not. And they might have, put a big red mark through it and written do not. And so you want to get back in the habit. That's one really easy way to make your writing more conversational is your right pinky finger, if you touch type, hits, our old friend, Mr. Apostrophe. And that's going to make your writing like go through it and see where you have written out the full two words instead of the contraction, where normally you would say it as a contraction. I'm so glad you're here instead of hello, I am so glad that you are here.
Yeah, so good. Remember, we were on Clubhouse one time and somebody said, write an email like your mom wrote it, or you're writing to your mom. I mean, we all read our emails from our mom. I messaged you and I said, am I the only one with a junk mail filter of my mom?
I forgot about that.
I know. I mean, seriously, like I can never hire an EA because of the emails I get from my mom, but like, there's just no way. But I think like the point was, very much like you want to make sure that you're in conversation as if it was a friend and that it feels personal and it just feels connected. As you
Yeah.
had started out this conversation, which was you so beautifully said that people just want to be seen. And I
Hmm.
think in this post-pandemic, as I sometimes think of it as collective trauma that everybody has been through, this idea of feeling heard and seen, I think is even more important as we move forward. So thank you for coming here and sharing your tips and wisdom. And if anybody wants to connect with you or get on your email list, because it is very good, I will say so
Thank
myself,
you.
what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, please come on over to talkingshrimp.com, spelled exactly the way it sounds, no hyphens or anything. Believe it or not, I scored that URL, talkingshrimp.com. And if you want to go right to the sign up, you could go to talkingshrimp.com/sign up, or you could go to talkingshrimp.com/ here's a good one, subject lines,
Oh,
all
yeah.
one word. If you're interested in writing better emails for your business, that's going to help you a ton because it's what I mentioned before, 33 most open subject lines and four that tanked, and templates, formulas for you to write your own must open emails.
That's gold. That is gold right there. Well, thank you, Laura, for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Laura. This was so much fun.